How about Captain Crunch's Crunch Berries with breakfast?
Whoa, Dad, we're on
Crunch Island. It's Jean-Luc Foot.
And he stole our crunch.
Quick, the zip line.
He's getting away.
Throw our last Crunch Berry.
No!
No one steals my Crunch Berries.
I think you mean my crunch berries. Choose your own crunch venture with Captain Crunch.
The Honda you want is here, so drive in the moment with the versatile CR-V or Accord, both named a Car and Driver 10 Best. And when you're driving a Honda, you're driving the brand named Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com Best Value Brand for 2023.
See dealer for financing details. Car and Driver, December 2023, based on 2023 brand image awards from Kelley Blue Book. Visit KBB.com for more information.
Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm JD Davidson. First, the Milwaukee Public Schools went to voters to ask for more money. Now the Madison Public Schools are doing the same. But the amount of money Madison wants makes Milwaukee's tax increase seem like small change. Joining us today is Ben Yount, Wisconsin contributor from the Center Square. Ben, what do the Madison schools want from taxpayers?
Well, simply put, they want $500 million more. They want more than $500 million more. This is something, like you said, this is the time of year when public schools are doing their budgets and public schools across Wisconsin are coming up short. It's a combination of everybody gets a raise. If you've covered if you live in a public school district almost anywhere in this country, you know that your teachers, your administrators, your school nurse, your school lunch lady, and your bus driver are getting a raise every year. You add that to Wisconsin's not isolated or particular phenomenon of seeing fewer students, and you have a recipe for getting less money from the state while having to spend more money on your teachers and administrators. And so school district after school district is going to the voters and saying, hey, can we please have some more? Madison schools say they need $600 million more. Now, only $100 million of that would be for day-to-day operations. That includes the salaries. That includes more of the equity projects. $500 million would go towards buildings, and that would replace one high school and renovate as many as 10 others, sort of like a joint building thing. They've got this school on one half and this school on the other. So the exact number and just what would be done to the buildings remains to be seen. But yeah, Milwaukee Public Schools asked for $252 million back in April. Madison Public Schools said, hold my beer, and they're now asking for $600 million more.
So let me ask this first. Do voters get the opportunity to decide on each, the $100 million ask and the $500 million ask, or is this all in one?
No, it's two separate questions. So voters in Madison could theoretically say, sure, we want to pay our teachers more and we want to continue our equity programs. But no, we don't want to build new schools. In theory, that could happen generally because you don't have an awful lot of split referendum ticket voters. If one question passes, then the other question passes. And I'm sure we could probably spend 2 hours talking about the intricacies of why school districts go to voters in which election and who votes and the percentages as to which these votes ever fail. Madison does pretty well when it asks for money for its schools. You have an awful lot of people who believe fully, truly, and wholly in public education. And generally, you don't have huge turnouts. That they're going in November, I think, shows that they're hoping for a huge turnout from Democrats in Madison in November, and they think that they have the support of the people on their side. Whether they have the support of all of the people, or the families of Madison Metropolitan School District families, I don't know, but I think Madison schools are relatively confident that they're going to get their $600 million more.
Yeah, I don't feel like you can ask for $600 million if you don't think you're going to get it. On an interesting side note, it is interesting that the vote's coming in November. I had written a piece for the Center Square earlier this year about failure of school levies during the primary seasons, when those failures were higher because there was a Republican presidential primary horse race, not a Democrat, so not many Democrats come out. The other interesting was I lived in Texas for a number of years. In school districts in Texas, they got to decide when to have the vote any day they wanted and where they had a vote. So the school district that I lived in and my children went to school in, they decided to have the vote the night of the Christmas pageants at all the schools, and voting took place at the schools. So the only people who went to vote were the parents who had kids in schools, and that passed. What are you hearing from outside groups about this ask in Madison?
This is a combination of you've got to be kidding me, and of course. We talked with Will Flanders for the story we wrote about it. And he's one of the education experts over at the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. And his response was, this is what Madison schools do. There is a sense that there's never enough money for public education. And that's not the case. Flanders had all manners of statistics and scorecards and report cards that show that Madison schools have not necessarily done anything to earn $600 million more. I mean, again, their graduation rate is in the 80s of percentile. I think it's like 87% of kids graduate from Madison Public Schools on time. Reading scores, math scores, all of the measurements of schools show that they're not necessarily teaching the kids they have in the schools they already have, and yet giving them more. There's no reason to think that you're going to get better results. He's also the one who pointed out the obvious, that this is a request that makes Milwaukee's $250 million referendum look like chump change. That the $500 million for facilities, for the school buildings, would be the second largest ask in terms of raw dollars ever in the state of Wisconsin. And you got to remember, and this is not just a Madison thing, Green Bay just voted to close 3 schools because they're losing students. In Wauwatosa, which is suburban Milwaukee, they're going to close their middle schools because they don't have enough students. Tosa, by the way, is going to ask for $124 million from taxpayers in coming referendums later this fall as well, but that hasn't yet been made official. But Madison schools are looking to spend more than $500 million on new school buildings at a time when you just generationally are seeing fewer students. And so you're going to have these great buildings that are going to sit partially or half empty in the years to come. And that's another part of this. Okay, but do you really need it? And look, in the April election of 2023, the Supreme Court election, the most expensive Supreme Court race ever in the history of the United States, the Democratic Party in Madison turned out 90% of its people. And if you have that kind of a voter turnout this November, which I think that absolutely should be expected, if you get 90% of Democrats to turn out in Madison, this $600 million tax hike request is going to fly by. It is going to pass with a rainbow of colors, and there will be no question about it. And I think that that's what Madison Metropolitan school leaders are counting on, that the parents who may question, hey, why am I paying so much and getting so little? They will be drowned out by other Democratic voters, college students in Madison who support public schools unquestionably because they don't have kids in public schools.
I do think before we go, I think it's fair to point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, the $500 million ask does have an end date. So it's not an ongoing tax. The $100 million ask would be an ongoing tax, correct?
Yeah, this is not in perpetuity. This is not the Spirit of St. Louis basketball team where they are paid in perpetuity. So, yeah, there is some good news. But again, in the short term, it's a big pill to swallow.
Still $500 million.
Yeah, $500 million is $500 million. And here's the thing, that with that $100 million request, that's for day-to-day operations. And that's a budget deficit that's not going to get closed. It's not as if all of a sudden Madison schools are going to get an influx of students or they're going to make a round of severe cuts. If they've got a $100 million deficit now, 4 years from now, there's nothing to make us think that it's not going to be 120 million or 150 million, because, this is exponential raises, 3%, 4%, 8%. And, that adds up. $1 million here, $1 million there. All of a sudden, you're talking about some serious money to local taxpayers.
Well, we'll see what happens in November. Ben, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.
Ready to ignite your future? The Loudoun County Combined Fire and Rescue System is recruiting volunteers now. No experience? No problem. LCCFRS provides free training and certifications. Network with a diverse group of people while making a real difference. Whether you want to be a firefighter, EMT, chaplain, or help administratively, we've got a role for you. Open new doors and boost your resume with the Loudoun County Combined Fire and Rescue System. Start now at opennewdoors.org. That's opennewdoors.org.
Every day, thousands of Comcast engineers and technologists like Oluseyi put people at the heart of everything they create.
Some of my favorite moments throughout my life are watching sports with my dad. Now I work at Comcast as part of the team that created our AI highlights technology, which uses AI to detect the major plays in a sports game.
And now, millions of sports fans will never miss a moment. Visit ComcastCorporation.com to learn more.
How about Captain Crunch's Crunch Berries with breakfast?
Whoa, Dad, we're on.
Crunch Island. He's Jean Lafoot.
And he stole our crunch.
Quick, the zip line.
He's getting away.
Throw our last crunch berry. No! No one steals my crunch berries.
I think you mean my crunch berries. Choose your own crunch venture with Cap'n Crunch.